So welcome, everyone. I'm so grateful to have you here with us today. I'm so excited to be starting this series of events at Sonoma State University, in which we're really thinking about teaching and we're thinking about education. We're celebrating teaching and education, and we're also doing that celebration with a mind open to the ways that education and schooling also fail us, right? The ways that schooling has fallen short of the types of lives, the types of desires that we want for ourselves, for our loved ones, for our communities, and for all the people who will be coming after us. So today, I'm really excited to welcome you to this kickoff event. So today we'll be giving testimony to why we are called to teach. And myself and Dean Laura Alamillo, and a number of current undergraduate students who are pre-teaching majors will be sharing with us why we are called to teach, the things that have led us to these pathways, the histories that have informed our decisions, the kinds of futures that we envision and that we are excited about. So I want to start off, first of all, by acknowledging that Sonoma State University and all of us in our various remote locations are on Indigenous land that many of us do not have historic and ongoing ties to. It's really important to think about our relationships to the lands that we occupy and to the peoples who continue to have important time immemorial relationships to the land and beings that are part of where we live. So I want to acknowledge the Coast Miwok and Southern Pomo, and the Federated Indians of the Grattan Rancheria, whose lands are where Sonoma State is, and that relationship is an important one that a lot of wonderful work has been done at and through and connected to the university to really think about what it means to be on lands that we came to through settlement, through migration, through needing to leave the places, and in many cases being forced to leave the places that we once would have called our own. So I start there and connect the land acknowledgement to where I'd like us to start off, right? I think an honest celebration of teaching, especially as we think about the moment that we're in, an honest celebration of teaching is going to ask us to think about the contradictions of teaching, the contradictions of its history in what is currently most often referred to as the United States. We need to think about the histories of socialization of Native peoples away from their cultures and practices, families and languages that schooling did. And we also need to think about the outline of schooling that occurred for enslaved African peoples, because on the one hand, where schooling served this negative socializing process, we also know that schooling can serve these liberating potentials, these liberating possibilities. And so it's at that nexus, right, at that place where we really want to celebrate the work that so many of us are doing, that so many of us are committed to, and that so many of us are envisioning for our future work as educators. And so it's really important for me to think about all the different possibilities that we have in front of us, right? That we have access to. We have the possibilities of teaching ethnic studies with our children and young people in pre-K through 12 schooling. We have the possibilities of multilingual education that isn't just used as a stepping stone, right? That isn't just used to turn away from the languages that we grew up with, but that can be used to grow and look at the artfulness that we can engage in all of our languages, right? That we can have these whole arrays of language practices, that we can become so skillful and so deft as we move across and within our entire linguistic repertoire. We have those possibilities for schooling. We have possibilities for schooling that are to be celebrated when we think about the young people who are neurodivergent and disabled. And how do we celebrate those different ways of thinking that so often schooling fits us into these little boxes, right? And so how do all these different ways of thinking and being and learning, how do we always make space for those? And we have the possibilities, and we can honor those educators who are already doing so much work to honor transgender children and youth and non-binary and queer children and youth. And in the ways that we think about what is normative in our classrooms. What are the family structures? Who are the parents that we expect to show up on parent night? And so there's so many different ways that we can offer to our students visions that include them, right? That give us these bountiful possibilities for the worlds that we want to live in. And we also have educators that are doing really wonderful work and helping us critique and speak back to the police killings that continue to take our young men of color, most often our Black young men, away from us. And the mourning that is accompanying that. And how do we hold space for our students as we feel those, right? And we know that that has happened just this past week, right? And we know that this has happened close to Sonoma, right? We know Andy Lopez. We know Alex Nieto, right? We know Oscar Grant. And it's so important that we hold space and think about the ways that we have to take schooling away from the criminalization, right? How do we engage in classroom practices that don't push our students out, right? That don't start those criminalizing practices in our classrooms. And there are so many wonderful educators who are already doing that, who are already thinking through the restorative justice practices that speak back to that need to push away. So I'm really excited about the program that we have for this celebration of teaching, because so many of these different practices that are to be celebrated and to be honored are what we've really tried to put together for you in these next 3 weeks. And I invite you all to attend those and to learn more. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can think about as educators and future educators, right? Is having that humility to know, you know what, I don't really know about that. And how can I learn more? How can I support the students who are disabled when I don't really understand disability justice yet? Right? That's something that I've told my students this semester. This is something I've been really working on learning because I know that it's an area that I don't know enough about, and I want my students to know enough as they go into their classrooms. So I'd like to move now to the testimonios, right? To the stories that help us understand why we are called to teach. And I just talked about a lot of different things that are inspiring and exciting and to be honored. And I think when I think back to why I became a classroom teacher, I taught high school English language arts for 8 years and Puente for the last 3 of those years. I became an educator because of the stories that I grew up with, because of the stories that my mom told me about her schooling, and she's here today. What did it mean to be a little girl going to kindergarten and being punished for speaking Spanish, right? What did it mean to be a young girl and every year have to go to the registration office and say, no, I want to be in the classes. I want to be in those classes. Like, don't put me in the classes where I can't go to college. And every year have to fight for that. And when she was in community college, talking to a counselor and the counselor saying, well, why bother? You're never going to transfer anyway. And so when she did graduate from Long Beach State in 1971, as one of the very few Mexican American women who did that at that time, you know, that's also why I became an educator, because I knew how much she had to deal with, how much she had to fight to get that degree, right? To access those ideas, right? To do something with her life that she was excited about doing, right? And there are so many different ways that we think about labor, and that of Mexican American and Latino women in particular, right? That's so important. And the ways that she fought against so many of these stereotypes and so many of these barriers. So when I think about why I became an educator, those are the stories, those are the reasons that I'm here and that I continue to do this work. So I just want to thank everyone for listening to me, and I could see your affirmations, you know, as I spoke, and so I really appreciate that. We have a number of additional people who are going to share some testimonials with you about why they are called to education. And I'm wondering, Dina Lemieux, if you would like to share next. And you know, we're starting with people who've been in the field of education for a while, and then we're going to hear from educators who are very much in the making.
Thank you. I think Dr. Lane has a comment.
Oh, yes.
I know that this is not about you, Dr. Burrell-Stone, but congratulations on winning the dissertation award at AERA. And that for qualitative work, which to me means stories, just as a gross generalization, but I hope everyone here knows what a scholar of education you are. And I just am so proud to be a colleague of yours. I just want to say congratulations at the onset of this celebration. Your trajectory, hearing about your family stories and your work and knowing your students are here, it's just really awesome. And congratulations. And I hope to read it and find details of that and read your publications. I just want to say that. I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lane. I really appreciate it. Yes, I'm very honored to have received those awards. I'm very honored to be able to do this work. And it's all very much connected. So thank you. I appreciate it so much. Yes.
So should I go ahead?
Please.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
So first I want to thank the faculty that are with us here today. I know that you all make a lot of great effort to work with our students, to work on campus, to work with our community in the advocacy for justice-oriented teacher education. So this came out of obviously the work out of EduCore, and Dr. Estrada is here. So I want to thank really her also for leading this work, and now really co-leading, right? Because we have all of us here today on really looking at how to advance this work within Sonoma State, but on a larger scale, the Chancellor's Office. And I know we have some guests from the Chancellor's Office here with us today. So thank you for joining us as well. When Dr. Stone was talking about, you know, her call to teach, a lot was I was just taking notes, and I was trying to think about, why I was called to teach, to educate or to work with children. And I immediately thought about the for me and my family was the dinner table, the sala, the living room, the outside of my home, and how conversations were always happening in English and in Spanish. Like we were always having conversations about just school, children, education. And these were constant conversations in my home. And I think that counters often deficit views of families that, when we go into schools, it's like, how can we educate or how can we teach families and children on how to become better readers? I use this a lot, but it is, education is not a neutral act. And I think when we listen to you and when we begin to now share our own testimonios, we will observe pretty quickly that we are grounded in history, as you said. When we look at even the word teaching or education, it is a banking kind of narrative of that we're transmitting knowledge. So all of you are here today, all of you young, future aspiring educators, look up the work by Paulo Freire, who really challenges this banking deposit of knowledge into families and communities and children. Because what we know is that families come with knowledge. They come with already a big repertoire of language, of history, of assets that as educators, we go into classrooms wanting to learn from the families and communities so that we can then adapt what we do to meet their needs. And so I think about my childhood as really kind of influencing my call to teach. I worked with migrant children really throughout my my time as a teacher. And what I learned from families is that, I was there to help facilitate, conversations in the classroom. I was there to kind of work hand in hand. But what I think, we've talked about, what you've heard from Dr. Burial Stone is that, often what happens is that as educators, there's this kind of baggage sometimes that we have to take into account as educators in the classroom. There's a balancing act that you're constantly navigating in the classroom and in schools. And I think, in my experience, within my own family, I learned, obviously my education and becoming an educator was critical, but really the care, the nurturing approaches that I adopted came from my parents and came from my grandmother and came from my tia and tios and primos and primas. It didn't necessarily come from formal schooling. And so, I think it's really important as we think about this call to teach is that as you're thinking about becoming an educator in classrooms, is that you're also kind of challenging and you're critiquing and you're looking at what are the kind of expectations in teacher education programs and bringing in what you bring from your own experiences. I think that's so important to really think about the assets that you bring in from your own lived experiences into the classroom as why you're called to in your aspirations to become educators. I also was just thinking about how do we as educators become more linguistically and culturally sustaining in classroom spaces. How do we affirm what kids and families bring in? How do we validate, but then how do we sustain it throughout the classroom so that it's not just in certain times, when we think about certain holidays or certain, really important though, right? Really important that we recognize, for example, that now we're recognizing Dolores Huerta, on this national or more California, right, acknowledgement, but that we really are able to use Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez and all of those heroes throughout the curriculum. And so it's, I think I just wanted to touch a little bit on that. And, you know, again, for me, I was called to the classroom because of my lived experiences within my family of who were also educators. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dina Lamio. I appreciate your words, and really appreciate that beautiful picture, right, of your family, and all the places, the sala, and just imagining these like really lovely conversations, and the care that you talk about, and being a facilitator, right, rather than a thinking model, filling in the empty minds kind of vision of teaching. Yeah, so thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm really excited now to invite some of our undergraduate future educators to share with us. I'm wondering, Day, if you might be willing to start.
Yes, I am. I was actually gonna like raise my hand or something like that. Yeah, I can definitely start. So my name is Dianetta Butler, but for short, Day Butler. To speak on my experience with education, in short, it was very high highs and mirrored with very low lows. I've come from taking Spanish since kindergarten to losing part of my language because of my choice to focus on English. It didn't have to be a choice that was either or, but at the time I didn't see a way for me to choose both. Now I realize that, and I want to continue moving forward. I need to continue moving forward in order for my future students to have the opportunity to see their future with their culture and their language. So I choose to pursue teaching. And I aim for teaching with my culture and my language in my hands, because I want to aid students in knowing that it is possible to express their culture, their backgrounds, and use that to succeed under the pressures of education. To say a little bit more about my Spanish immersion elementary school that I went to, some hard words to hear as a third grade student was that you're never going to college, you can't even sit still. But here I am doing the opposite of what Master Carmen said to my class so long ago. I was a very attentive student, meaning I paid attention to everything. Some of my classmates at the time would have forgotten that, but I didn't. I used those words to remind myself that I'm here to achieve everything that I want to, and I'm here in college doing that exact thing, to prevent students from hearing those words from someone who is supposed to be there to allow little seeds to grow, not to poison them with pesticides. Shifting to high school now, I was fortunate enough to have been able to go to a good high school, although it was miles away, approximately 40 minutes on a good day, and some days I would rise before the sun to get there on time. I can remember from high school having the space to explore what I wanted. I took art for a couple of years, did track and field for 2 years, did lacrosse for the other 2 years, and was an AVID. One of the best decisions was being an AVID because the teacher I was able to go to with challenges and for advice, and even go to for observations later in my educational career. They helped me find the school that was right for me when it came to choosing a college. That's why I'm here at Sonoma State University. And that is one of the reasons my greatest passion has grown to be education, because education has layers to it. At first sight, to an outsider, it looks like teachers teach and students learn, but there's so many more reasons for being in a class. There's the relationship that is built, and I can't wait to see my future students light up with an idea for a project or talk about something that they're passionate about, something they are looking forward to, or even see them try to find their way into learning what they want from their time here. This is why I think teaching is so fascinating. It's incredible the work that is being done, and I feel in my core that growing passion and hope to see a future that I want to be a part of. My college education has allowed me to remember parts of my past education, reflect upon it, and I am so grateful at this time because I have seen education fail my friends and family, but it didn't fail me. Although I have had challenges with shifting environments when I first got to being a college student, it allowed me to grow, and I wanted to show that it is possible to do so to my future students. That is why I'm called to teach. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so lovely. I really, really enjoyed the vision that you shared of you imagining yourself with your future students, right? And seeing them grow and protecting them, right, from that hurtful comment that your third grade teacher said, right? Right. This very narrow vision of, you know, what it means to be able to learn and be excited and, right, to continue to educate ourselves. And I'm so glad that you're able to put your future views within that kind of protective, right? That protective cocoon that you're imagining for your students. Thank you, Day, so much. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Maylin, I was wondering if you would share your testimonial next.
Sure, I'd love to.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Maylin Heike. I am a fourth year liberal studies / Hutchins major with an early childhood studies minor. I've been interested in teaching since I was a child. My passion for working with children came to me early and naturally. As I grew older and began to recognize characteristics in my teachers, I became interested in taking on a more formal teaching role and mentoring roles. Starting in my high school, I volunteered as a camp counselor at week-long summer camps. My interactions with campers taught me how to promote students and engage their curiosity. A year later, I took a camp counseling job that allowed me to interact with campers for several weeks at a time. During that summer, I spent as much time observing my peers as I did watching the kids. From that, I learned what kinds of teaching styles worked and which ones did not work. By the end of high school, I had accumulated over 100 volunteer hours at different programs, always as an instructor or counselor, and usually for much younger children. I continued in college, completing 40 in-class hours and 40 Zoom observation hours in a fourth grade classroom in my local community. I also worked as a child care teacher for Sonoma County's YMCA in their before and after school programs. While I believe these experiences will make me a better teacher, that's not the only reason why I did them. To me, the classroom has always been a safe and welcoming place where I could learn, explore, and create. Now, every time I walk into a classroom, a classroom as a counselor or student observer, it is another chance to give others the same feelings of being nurtured and encouraged that I received. There's one other factor that has significantly influenced my decision to going into teaching, and that is my ethnic and cultural background. I'm a first generation Chinese American adopted by an American family. According to the US Department of Education, that fact places me among merely 2% of full-time and part-time teachers nationally who are of Asian ethnicity. I've been fortunate to be raised in an environment that is both diverse and inclusive, and having been raised to value the worth of every individual. And I look forward to becoming a new voice and perspective added to the teaching community. At the same time, I hope to enable and motivate every student from whichever background they come from, because I believe that their dreams are valued. One particular goal I have as a future teacher is to focus on mental health. The stress on children today is tremendous, and it seems that social media demands constant attention and interruptions in every conversation. Young girls in particular struggle with poor self-concept because they don't look like their favorite Instagram celebrities, they can't sing like the 10-year-old on The Voice, or aren't as smart as the 14-year-old who just earned their bachelor's degree. Even at the elementary school level where I plan to teach, students are being diagnosed with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and so on. They need to learn coping skills such as how to process their emotions so that they are more confident in themselves. Teachers have a defined part to play, and I look forward to doing more research on my ways as a teacher and how others can be more effective in reaching out to help these troubled students. A second goal I have is to be adaptable. Adaptable teachers know that not every student learns in the same way or at the same speed. These teachers have developed multiple teaching techniques that will accommodate different learning styles. They have lesson plans that can be modified depending on students' cognitive and emotional statuses. They have open minds and self-reflect and evaluate. Finally, in addition to being adaptable in my teaching, I will strive to be considerate of my students' differences as well. This could be as simple as varying the seating arrangements to encourage students to get to know each other better, or keeping a variety of books that will appeal to different interests, levels, or learning styles, and reading levels. And this is why I'd like to be a teacher. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here, and this has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Maylin. Thank you. I loved hearing about you at summer camp and seeing what worked and what didn't work, right? There's so much to learn, right? Yeah, thank you. And I also really appreciate the emphasis on mental health, right? And well-being, right? And these gendered expectations. And those are such important ways that we can support our students. Yeah, thank you. I love this vision. All right. Let's see, Valerie, I'm wondering if you can share next with us.
Okay, yeah, I can.
All right.
So hello, my name is Valerie Rodriguez, and I'm a senior here in the Hutchins program at Sonoma State. I was born in Fremont, California, and went to school there from kindergarten through second grade until I moved to San Jose in the third grade, and which is where I currently live. So the grade I want to teach is elementary school, mainly third grade, which is, and you'll see why in a couple seconds, because my call to teaching really stemmed from when I moved from Fremont to San Jose. My elementary school in Fremont was largely Hispanic, Latinx students, so I was comfortable with students there. I felt familiar with those students. Each new grade level, I had about 6 students with my same last name, so I saw myself in those kids. So it was quite a culture shock moving to San Jose in the third grade to a largely white elementary school, which is something that I would see in a largely white middle school, largely white high school. I didn't have my tribe there, or at least not yet. I didn't know when I would become comfortable. And that all really changed when I met that third grade teacher who I later also had in fifth grade. And till this day, the reason I want to teach is to be someone just like her. She never made any assumptions on my background because of the color of my skin. She never made any assumptions about me. And honestly, in that class, I felt seen, I felt recognized, I felt heard. She made me feel like an individual. And that is something that I want to give back to my students, because you learn throughout your educational journey that you're not always going to have teachers like that. You're not always going to go to schools where teachers treat you in that sense, which is something I learned in middle school at the time when I was doing fairly well in my classes. My mom and I had received a letter from my middle school stating, "Is your Latinx student struggling in school? Date and time, come to the library, free resources, free taquito dinner." There was honestly so much not right with that letter that school should not have even sent. And even the next day I mentioned to my friends, did you guys receive a similar letter? And it was only me, the only Latinx person in my friend group. And that isn't something any child should see. Such an assumption, especially made by an entire school, that simply because of the color of my skin, I should, of course, be doing worse in school, which wasn't the case. And because of situations like that, I've made it my mission that I don't want another student to feel that way. I want to be able to be like that third grade teacher I had and treat students as individuals. I want to get to know them personally, to get to know their strengths and weaknesses and help them to be able to grow from that. I want to be able to celebrate diversity in my classroom and just make it a safe and inclusive place for everyone to be seen and heard. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. Yes, I see why you'll be a wonderful third grade teacher. And I really, really appreciate that you had such a wonderful teacher to give you that vision and support of what teaching should be, right? And what it can be, as opposed to, right, these stereotypes about us that assume that we can't do X, Y, or Z, or that we should be doing some other thing. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Bernadette, will you share your testimonial next?
Yeah.
All right.
Of course. Okay. So, hi, I'm Bernadette. I'm from Southern California, about an hour from LA, in a small town called Norco. I am a fourth year at Sonoma State, hopefully attending the credential program next year. And I plan on teaching elementary school. I also am thinking third grade sounds fun, but I'm open to other ages because I'm not sure quite where I want to fit yet. Um, but why do I want to be a teacher? So my family is a family of educators. My mom's an educator, my grandpa's an educator, my grandma's an educator. And so I was filled with education throughout my whole life, which I loved. But at the same time, my little brain was like, I want to be different. I want to do something different. So I strived for something different than teaching. But I kept coming back to teaching because even when I was younger, I was helping out kids in my church in like Bible study. And then growing older, going into like middle school, high school, I was helping like classmates out in class so often. And people were coming up to me telling me like, oh, you explain this so much better to me. I understand when you tell me how to do it more than the teacher. um, so even though I didn't necessarily think that was my calling, it kind of came to me. And then in high school, I remember taking multiple different career tests and I always got teacher. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this is where I'm meant to be. Like this must be it. And then I did some volunteer work. I did Boys and Girls Club after school, my freshman year of college. And I loved working with children. I learned that they are frustrating. They are frustrating, but I love them. Because it's wonderful when they finally figure it out. Like that moment you understand when they finally figure it out, and it's great. And then the other aspect of kind of why I wanted to be a teacher was because I would say that background is a very key component in a child's performance in school when it comes to what's going on at home or what you're being taught or anything like that. And for me personally, it was family. There was a lot of family issues that were going on at a young age. And so having school as like a safe space where I too had a few teachers that saw me and knew when I like wasn't okay and when I was okay and would kind of adapt or pull me aside when they noticed those changes. So I kind of also want to acknowledge that there might be family things going on or other things going on at home. And I really just want my classroom to be like a very safe space. I want kids to know that they can come talk to me and that not only they can come talk to me, but I'm not a superior. I also make mistakes. And I think that's a big one with me, just because I feel like any teacher that has made me feel like stupid or inferior to them, I've never done like well in their class, because you're not utilizing someone's skills, you're making them feel bad. And I feel like because our education system today is geared towards a certain type of student, we're often letting a lot of students feel bad and not utilizing their skills and making them feel that they can succeed. It doesn't matter. You might have one skill that you're really good at. You can succeed in that one skill. And so I kind of want to focus on that. And then I did have teachers, even in college, I had a teacher tell me he didn't know how I got through college so far. And I'm graduating with a high GPA. So, I mean, we all have like those bad experiences, but I think that it takes is like that one teacher to really see you. And if I can be that for somebody, then that would be awesome. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. Yeah, and you brought up an important issue, right? How do we make space for our students, right? When we have things going on at home right now, how do we make space for our students as we are in the middle of a global pandemic, right? And it affects us all, and it also affects us all differently, right? It affects some families in different ways than others. And so these are things that we really need to take into account, right? And think about, when do those deadlines just, become guidelines, right? And, when is attendance, important, but we're not going to punish people who really need a break, right? And so there's so many ways that we can make space for our students, right, when they have those needs, both right on those individual, like it's happening at home and like with our families level, and also in those ways that we think about, things that affect us on a broader scale. So thank you. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, and I see lots of love that's there in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for participating there. And so finally, I would like to invite Edith to share your testimonio, if you'll do that.
Hello, my name's Edith Leon, and I'm a first-gen college student. I'm hopefully graduating this December. And honestly, my call to teaching was, I still say it's pretty recent, even though I had some instances in my life where I experienced them, but I didn't think I would become a teacher. And I also recently found out that my dad wanted to become a teacher, but he couldn't have that dream come true. But when I was younger, when I first started school, I didn't know much English since I grew up in a speaking Spanish household. Everything I consumed was in Spanish. And when I started school, the teacher called out for Edith Leon. And I remember my dad telling me that when my teacher would call out my name, Edith Leon, that I should say presente. When the teacher would repeat Edith Leon and no one said anything, I could see her growing a bit upset. And I remember at one point her kneeling down and telling me something along the lines that I should stop being a troublemaker and should have responded to her during attendance. And she asked me if my name was Edith Leon. No. Edith Leon, no. And I shook my head because I remember my dad telling me that, well, I grew up with my name as Edith Leon. And she had told me that since we are living in America, that it's Edith Leon. And then ever since then, I just been called by a name that I really have no connection or identity to it. And on multiple occasions, when I have introduced myself as Edith Leon, I had just been called picky, and that it wasn't necessary to say it like that. And multiple times, I did think to myself, well, maybe I am just being picky over a name. When I started middle school, which was 6th grade, I was accused of having a knife in my hoodie. I was actually not aware of the no hoodie policy since I had just entered middle school. And I actually saw a bunch of the white students have them. And when the dean saw me, took me to the dean's office and told me to hand over the weapon, which I was really confused at 12 years old. And I thought to myself, how was I gonna explain to my parents that I was suspended for accused of having a knife for wearing a hoodie? And then when I moved to Santa Rosa, I attended a high school with 99.9% Mexican or Latinx population, and we only had 400 students in my whole high school. And we often spoke in Spanish during classes, breaks, lunch, etc. And I did so with my friends and some of the staff. And I remember during my senior year class, some of my peers were speaking in Spanish, and my teacher got up from her desk, stood up at front of the class, and said, "Hey guys, I know Spanish is your guys' first language, but this is an English class, so speak in English, okay? I'm not racist, and I love you guys, but speak Spanish outside." And I felt really sick by her words. And when I was starting my first semester of college, I received my very first D, and it was an in-class essay. And I thought to myself, oh, wow, I must have been really nervous if I did so bad, so I'll just go to office hours. And I lived with tears because the professor, recommended me to try a different major, and that English was not for everybody, especially for a person like me. And so I left office hours crying. So these 4 experiences, along with many more, were my call to teaching. And I know a lot of other students have probably dealt with much worse. And I just remember thinking that I wanted to be a teacher who wouldn't be like the teachers I had in the past, I wanted to become a teacher who would care for all my students, no matter who they were, where they came from, a teacher who cares about my students' needs, a teacher who does not criminalize my students, a teacher who lets students speak their native language by having culturally sustained pedagogies, a teacher who encourages students and not put them down. I want students to feel like their voice, language, name, culture, and community matter. And yeah, this was also like a little speech that maybe one day I could tell my dad, because he also wanted to be a teacher and I just recently found out. So thank you for listening, and that's why I was called to teach.
Thank you so much, Edith. You have always deserved so much more than those experiences. And I have great faith that you will provide that for your students and that you will show others how to do that as well. So thank you. And I also it's really beautiful that you learned that your father wanted to be a teacher and that you were doing that. And you know, sometimes we you know, we're really able to think about our family legacies and the things that our parents do for us, the ways that they show us, like Dina Lamio talked about, right? And they show us how to be caring and loving and generous, and sometimes make great sacrifices so that we can, you know, carry out those things in the ways that we hope to do so. So thank you. I want to invite everyone just to take a moment. These were such wonderful and powerful testimonios. I invited us to share testimonios today because they're a way of connecting our stories together, right? Way of connecting our histories and our visions for the future to things that exist and things that don't exist yet. And I think so much of what was shared today was really this beautiful envisioning, right, of the love and the ways that we want to honor our students and who they are, and all of their potential and all of their ways of being in the world, in our classrooms, right? And welcoming our families and knowing that our families are already providing us so much, right? So thank you, everyone, for sharing in this moment, for witnessing, you know, and holding the space for each person who shared. I'm really grateful to work with several of the students who are here today, and have been really grateful to learn along with them. With Edith, with Day, with Ellie, who's here in the audience. And I'm just so happy that, you know, I have the chance to continue to think about teaching and continue to think about education in this current role. And so right now I would like to share, actually I'm going to invite Dr. Estrada to share first some of the things that we're doing at Sonoma State to support these visions, right? To support these pre-teaching visions, to support the pathways, and to really think about what kinds of education we want for the people that we love.
Thank you, Dr. Bodo-Stone, Teresa. My name is Dr. Kelly Estrada. I am the Department Chair of Curriculum Studies and Secondary Education, but I'm also a couple of different things that are involved in supporting undergraduate students who have aspirations to become teachers. The first role I share with Dr. Rihanna Casesa in literacy studies and elementary education. Both of these departments are in the School of Education at Sonoma State University. And we're co-principal investigators, co-PIs, co-directors on the Preparing Underrepresented Educators to Realize Their Teaching Ambitions, or the Puerta project. And we're in our 4th year of this project. It's a Title V grant to the university, and it's meant to develop Sonoma State as a Hispanically serving institution. And with the support of our Dean, Dean Alamillo, and the Vice President for Student Affairs, Dr. Greg Sawyer, folks in CASE, our Center for Academic Access and Student Engagement, Dr. Gerald Jones, and other folks, we provide full-time advisors for undergraduate students who are Latinx, who have aspirations to become teachers. We are also providing more access to general education courses for students who are trying to get their GE credit. If you've come in through a summer bridge program here at Sonoma State, we give you priority enrollment into GE classes that have been set aside so that you can get your 15 units and get your undergraduate degree. And then through the School of Education, we've been able to support lots of exam prep and fee offsets for the exams that are required to get into the credential program, and also for the exam or the performance assessments that students do in order to demonstrate they're ready to go into the teaching field. So if you're a Latinx student and you are applying to a credential here, a program here at Sonoma State University, please do get in contact with our credentials office, and they will give you information about how to access these supports, which are, like I said, the exam support for the CBEST and CSET. We have lots of different kinds of supports, including workshops and online tutorials. We can offset the fees for those exams if you're a Latinx student and you're a Puerta program student, and we can offset the EdTPA fees. The other hat that I wear is as the Chancellor's Office EduCore Director, and I work with faculty across all of the CSU who are in schools of education and other programs on campus like MESA and like CASE, like our Center for Academic Access and Student Engagement, to help students who are interested in becoming teachers get information and support, professional networking support, in order to be successful in getting your undergraduate degree, or if you're in an ITEP program, getting your degree and a credential. So through the auspices of the Chancellor's Office, I've been able to support Dr. Stone in becoming our EduCore faculty lead for the campus, which you'll do through this next academic year, and continue to put into place this kinds of programming like the Celebration of Teaching Month and other things that we're doing throughout the academic year to support you as an undergraduate student who are getting into who are on this pathway to become a teacher. So I want to thank you all for being here today. I was tremendously moved by your testimonios, and want to celebrate you all for your aspirations of becoming future teachers. I can't wait to see you in classrooms. It's going to be so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this time to talk.
Thank you so much, Dr. Estrada. There's so many wonderful things at Sonoma State supporting future educators. And so I also want to talk about EduCore as a program that is supporting future educators by providing throughout the semester both informational and critical education sessions. So informational sessions include information about FAFSA renewal and information about credentials and kind of the specifics of the different exams that are required. And then the critical education sessions are there to really talk about a lot of the issues that were raised today. A lot of those contradictions that exist within the field of teaching and education, and the ways that we can access resources to address those, right? To think about how do we honor the languages of our students in our classrooms, right? What does it mean to do translanguaging in an English language arts classroom? Speaking to what Edith brought up about her English teacher, and that's something that in my classes with undergraduate future English educators that we've been talking about. What does that look like? What does it mean to not just develop English, but develop language arts, right? What is that? And how can we really build and grow our understandings of language to honor all of our possibilities there? So that's just one example. So I'm very excited about these events that we've held throughout the semester. And then also this whole celebration of Teaching Month. It's 3 weeks. So coming up tomorrow, we have a session for future STEM educators. And we have on Thursday a session for multilingual educators. So what is that bilingual authorization? How do I get it? What is the residency program? So important information. And then the following 2 weeks, we have more sessions. And I think you've probably seen the registration page and seen all the information. But I'm really, really excited about all of those. We have sessions coming up about ethnic studies in pre-K through 12 classrooms, and what does it mean to build and grow community, both now while at Sonoma State, and then once in the teaching field. So there's lots that we'll be talking about. We have current credential students who will be sharing their experiences, and then we have current K through 12 educators as our closing event, whose students will be able to talk with and really kind of answer some of those questions of what is it like right now. So I invite everyone to join us for those. If you're not already following us on Instagram, please do. And then also we have a post-session survey to ask you about your thoughts, to ask you maybe what questions remain, and also to see how you might want to be involved. So I'm going to finish up today by thanking you all for your time this afternoon, for thanking Asia Leduc, who's done so much working with me to plan these events. I'm really happy to be working with her. And thank you again to Tina Lamio for being here and sharing. And thank you all of you who shared your testimonios. They're truly wonderful and really inspiring, and really so wonderful to think about why we're doing this work, and why this work is so important. So thank you again to Maylin, to Edith, to Bernadette, to Valerie, and to Day for being here. All right. So I wish you all a really great evening. Hope to see you at our upcoming events. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Day. So wonderful.